Hello there, welcome, thank you for stopping by. Please feel free to join me, grab your tablet and your stylus and sculpt along with me for about half an hour and enjoy the sculpting workflow, the sculpting process, as we're doing this slow-paced guided tutorial or walkthrough with no time lapses, no skipping ahead, and as you can see by this very weird thing that I'm doing here, just fixing the mistakes as they come along. So what am I doing here? I'm just fixing the proportions a bit. We're making this chasmosaurus here and we're focusing on creating the skull shape and the head shape and all the bony definitions and all that nice, those nice interesting features. And I just noticed that my proportions weren't so correct here, so I just masked this part, inverted the mask and dragged this part upwards just to create this kind of space. And you can see that I have to make my eye socket much smaller than it is. So now that I've done this, you can notice here that those faces are really stretched and we are not gonna be able to do some decent sculpting on them. In fact, if I show you with the wireframe, you can see that this has become quite unworkable. So we'll just remesh it like so, and now we can sculpt on top of this. So what I'm gonna sculpt here, I'm not gonna bother about this ear hole because we're not gonna be seeing this, so I'll just smooth this part out. I'm mostly interested in this kind of triangular shape, which if we look here, you can see that it goes inwards a little bit, so I'm very interested in that shape because you can see it here. It's not so visible here, but you can really see it in this image, and this is our main inspiration, so I want to make sure that we get this shape there. Now looking from the front of it, I know that this shape, if we also look at this reference here, this shape shouldn't be curving outwards like this. So we'll just move this with the elastic deform, just move it inwards. And I can also move this part upwards a little bit, like so. And maybe even push it here to thin it out a little. There are many ways you can thin it out. You can sculpt it out, you can use the inflate brush and deflate it, but you can also just move it around. Like I said on the previous episode, the move brushes, the elastic deform and the grab brush are really versatile. You can use them for a lot of stuff. So I'll just, oops, sorry about that. I'll just kind of squeeze this a little bit. I don't want it to be too wide. So I'll just alter this silhouette a little bit. Let's look at the references. Maybe I want to make it a bit shorter too, on the top. And a little bit more circular. Yeah, there we go, that looks a bit better. And I could spend a lot of time playing with the silhouette here, but you know, we have really important stuff to do, so let's try to get some of that important stuff in. Now, on the previous episode, we kind of created this skull shape here, and if you didn't watch that episode, I recommend that you go ahead and do that before watching this one, because we're gonna be building on top of what we did last episode. And I'll just quickly fix this eye socket here to make it a bit more closer to this. Now there are a lot of parts here that play into each other. We have this shape here that is very directly related to the position of the eye socket. So let's see what we can do about this. Yeah, I was saying that I recommend you go ahead and watch the previous episode, because what we're doing here is creating this skull shape and then building on top of it. And the reason why we do this is because it's very important to the end result. I'll just show you in just a minute here. Because of how this chasmosaurus, this particular dinosaur, is portrayed, and most dinosaurs are portrayed like this, very skin wrapped, you know, with the skull shape being very visible underneath the skin. It's really important that we get this kind of, all those kinds of details, like this nasal hole here. See, it's very visible, the skull shape is very visible underneath the skin. And that's why we are building this very basic skull shape and then building on top of it and creating the, well, not the final shape, but something closer to it. We are at a very early stage in our sculpt, and we don't worry too much about the end result at this point, or about being very accurate about the things we do. See, like this is a complete disaster over here, but we don't really worry too much about that, because the important thing in this early stage is just building some very basic details, some nice guides of what's about to come next. It's all prep work in a sense, and the more prep work you do, the better the end result is gonna be. So now I'm just sculpting this out a little, and the way that I most often sculpt is by, let me quickly show you, by doing a sort of a Z pattern, but very close together. It's let me show you in a bigger area, like here. It's basically this Z kind of pattern, alright? But it's really close and quite fast. And because I'm taking advantage of the pressure sensitivity for the strength, I can see how it fades in and out, and it's not an even volume of strength. Like if I turn this off, see, it doesn't really fade that well. But because we have this turned on and we're using our tablet and our stylus, it kind of fades in and out, and you can play with this and build some quite interesting shapes here, and some variety between different definitions. And this is the trick we do here, and we either build up or dig and take away volume, which is what I'm doing in this particular case. I'm going through the same explanations for almost every video, but that's because I'm not really sure if this is your first video or not, so it's better to explain the same thing a few times than have people being really confused. Alright, so now I'm masking this lower jaw here because this area, because I want to pull it a little bit and make it go behind this shape here. And I'm masking the area that I want to affect, and then I'll invert this by Control I, and then with a big size move brush I'll just move this shape, and just this shape, and move it, let's say about here should be good. And in fact I'm going to also remesh it and select Preserve Paint Mask. This remeshes it but keeps the mask that we created, and it doesn't matter that it's a bit of a mess here. I'll just inflate this. Now I'm inflating it because see how it has this weird, almost like a hole or an arc here, and it's gonna be hard to work with. So I'll inflate this, and you see the faces become really distorted, but that's okay, because when I remesh it, it will fix up this area, and now I can smooth it out, I can sculpt on top of it, and it should be completely fine to work with. for the most part. If it doesn't really work, you can remess it again, you can inflate it a little bit more. Some areas will not work, others will. But when we get rid of the mask completely, it should be fine. Alright, so I'll just quickly do a little bit here, a little bit of digging to play with that shape a little. Let's see, this doesn't look that great, so I'll just move this a bit inwards like this and remess it again. And now if we want to separate this little thing later on, that's not gonna be too much of an issue, but for now I'm gonna leave it as it is, because again I'm mostly concerned about the shapes and the proportions, not about how well made they are. Alright, yeah, I'm mostly concerned about the silhouette and the position of them. Alright, so this eye socket, it should be a little bit smaller. Alright, there we go. I like this. So now let's just dig in a little bit here and make this kind of triangular shape. Alright, and we'll add a little bit of volume next to it to create this change of levels, going all the way down here. Alright, this doesn't look bad, it looks quite good actually. There's a nice little definition here. And actually it seems to be going all the way up, so let's make it go all the way up. All the way up here. Alright, and I'll use the move brush to pull those shapes out a little and make it a bit more almost square looking. There we go. Yeah, this looks kind of intimidating actually, which is good because that's the point of this this big frill and the horns and all that stuff. It's for this creature to look intimidating, so the predators, you know, whatever kind of big dinosaur predator it had would be scared to fight this. So now what I'm doing here is doing little X patterns like this, going fast across this, down the middle of it, and creating this kind of frill shape here, this ridge, which represents this bone and all the skin that is built around it. And we've done this, gone down the middle, so let's focus on the rest of the shape and try to finish this head shape, or at least the base of it. So now I'm digging in here because you see that there is some kind of a bit of a change in levels in some places, and I'm kind of digging in to level it out, to even it out. And see, now it's quite evened out. There isn't this kind of lump here, this one, right? So by digging into it, I've leveled it out. It's now evened out, and we can start working on this. So I'll continue digging out about this area because I'm trying to get this kind of hole here, and it looks a bit like a triangle that ends in a circle, and we should keep that in mind. It doesn't really look like that at the moment, but that's okay, we'll get it there. I'll dig a little bit down the skull because you can see that there's a change in levels here. This part sticks out and there are a little bit of a dent here. there's a little bit of a dent there, so I'll dig in this part like this and go a little bit further down. Now also notice that I'm making my brush size much smaller as I'm getting to this kind of smaller area and trying to sculpt out the tip of this, like if it was like an arrowhead and this is the tip of it. So I change my brush size according to the area that I'm sculpting. Alright, let's see. We'll add a little bit more volume here because this is a really heavy brow that our dinosaur has, and it's nice to emphasize it. And we can even exaggerate it a little, that's okay. It's okay to exaggerate things a little bit. Alright, and I want to make this kind of shape continuing, this ridge continuing and fading out, but I'm not sure I want this curve here. It doesn't seem to have this curve, so I'll just quickly use my elastic deform and change the silhouette of it. And there we go. Play with the silhouette of it, and so far so good. We'll keep working on this. It seems to be following and kind of opening up to reach this area here, so let's do that. And the way we're gonna do that is, let's see, right, first let's even this part out as well. So let's dig this out and have a nice even surface for it. Now why I'm digging out is instead of adding, it would work the same in the sense that even if I add it instead of digging out, it would level it out. But I'm digging in because this area is mostly what is it, convex or concave? I'm not sure, I always confuse the two. English isn't my native language, so but you know what I mean, it goes inwards, right? But so because it goes inwards, that's why I'm digging out instead of adding to it. If it was going outwards like this ridge, then I would be adding to it. So let's start adding some stuff here. And we have this kind of circular shape here. It's quite wide here, so it seems to me that it should be around this area, maybe. Let's see, let's try to determine that by changing our camera, our viewport camera, to be a bit closer to this reference. Something like this. Right, and this thing should be, let's undo that. Yeah, should be around here and going up and out like this. Yeah, you know, you have a lot of time, you can play around with your stuff. That sounded dirty. I didn't mean it like that. You can play around with your sculpts as long as you want. But I have to kind of keep in check, keep in mind the time, so I can't take too long to work these shapes out and make them precise. But you can do that. You have all the time you need to make something look exactly like it should be looking. So I'll bring this middle part inwards a little bit, like this, and let's work on the silhouette of it a little bit, on the outlines of it. So I'll just add a little bit here too, like this, to kind of emphasize this area. And I want to keep it a bit more triangular, so I'll grab this and move it downwards a little. Notice where I'm grabbing, that I'm not grabbing like this, and actually that looks good. Okay, maybe I'll do this, but I was just saying that I'm grabbing the outline that I created here and moving that outline without affecting the silhouette too much, but kinda like this, so I'll affect the silhouette as well. Why not? Let's change the silhouette of it a little bit. Right. See, that's why it's important to try stuff out and go with the flow, you know? Like Bob Ross used to say, there are only happy little accidents, there are no mistakes here. Alright, so let's dig this out a little bit more to emphasize it a little bit more. And I'm doing a little bit of... See, I did those lines here to kind of emphasize this ridge, but now I'm doing circular movements to make some nice, smooth, circular type of thing here, because it seems to me, by looking at this, that it's quite a bit circular here. So, because we're basing a lot of our decisions on this, on the aesthetics of it, we'll be doing some stuff like that, you know, taking some decisions to be a bit more creative instead of scientifically accurate here. Now, I'm doing those circular movements because the type of stroke that you do, if it's a line, if it has a curve to it, if it's a circle, if it's axis like this, the type of stroke that you do really affects the shape. See, if I was doing circular movements here, see, the shape is much different than the one we have with the X patterns. So please do keep that in mind, because it's one of the reasons why a lot of beginner sculpts don't look as good as they could look, because, you know, when you start sculpting, you don't really have this concept of the brush stroke affecting the look, but it does. It's like painting a lot in that way. The type of brush stroke you do with a painting brush affects the end result you get. Alright, now you might have noticed that there was a little bit of a glitch here. If you dig too deep, it's because the surface is too thin and the faces kind of fade to the other side, and you can just add a bit more volume there and that should take care of it. I'll very lightly dig this part out again to make it a bit thinner. I'm not gonna worry about the back side of this, and in fact I'm gonna probably do it off camera. It's the same process as this, it's exactly the same thing. So now what I'm gonna do here is two things. I wanna fix this big shape and make it a bit higher resolution, add a little bit of shape to it, and I also wanna add a sphere, a UV sphere for the eyeballs. Now by adding the UV sphere, I'm gonna immediately press R, Y and 90, and this has, and I'm gonna go to side orthographic. Wait, was that RY90? Yeah, I must have pressed something wrong there. Okay, and I'm gonna move it here, scale it down quite a lot, move it about here, scale it down more so that this outline is a little bit smaller than the eye socket. Go to the front view, front orthographic, press G, X, move it on the X axis around this area. I don't want it sticking out too much, so around this area would be good. Alright, we're not gonna use this for the actual eye, but it's a placeholder for now, so we'll see what we're gonna do with the eyes later on. For now it's a placeholder, I'm just leaving it here. I'm gonna mirror it by selecting the head, mirror it on the other side of the head, and now we have some nice eyeballs there. And those nice eyeballs can't really float around like this, we have to give them a little bit of something there to hold them. So I'll just quickly alter the silhouette one last time here, make it a bit nicer. This part I don't mind for now, I think it's fine, we'll work on it later on. I'm saying as I'm still working on it, but that's okay, you get carried away sometimes. So now what we're gonna do here is start adding a lot of volume around our eye and cover it up, cover the whole eye up. And notice that by doing this, it has created this kind of flat surface. And notice what I did here. I made my brush size a bit smaller and add it on top of that. And that has made that flat surface a more spherical surface. So once I've done this, I'm gonna hit remesh. And you know what? In fact, I'm gonna go even lower. Now, why am I going lower? You see that by doing this remesh, see all those faces here? I'm not gonna be able to sculpt on those faces. I'm not gonna be able to do much with them. So I'll go even lower, like 0.005, let's say. Let's see what happens. There we go. And now I'm gonna smooth this part out, the outer ring here. I'm not gonna smooth it entirely because I want this eye socket and brow to be a little bit visible, like it is here. See this eye socket here? So I'm not gonna smooth it out entirely. Now if you're making a human or pretty much any other animal that exists, you would be smoothing it out quite a lot. But because we're making dinosaurs, and like I said before, we like to portray dinosaurs like this kind of monster, dragon type of thing, which they probably were not. We like to have the skull be quite visible. So now I'm digging in near the center of it to uncover this eyeball. And you can probably tell where this is going. We have sort of created an eyelid here, which is a little bit fatter than I care for. So I'm gonna undo that, and I'm gonna dig across it lightly, not pressing too hard, but dig across it like this. Try to keep a spherical shape to it if I can. If not, that's okay. Let's turn this off for a little. And you can see how I'm kind of keeping the spherical shape because I changed the camera angle, I changed the position from where I'm sculpting. Alright, so now I can smooth this out a little, and by digging in, you see that we are kind of creating this very basic eye shape here, or eyelid. And I'm gonna add a little bit more volume around it, make sort of a circle or a ring around the eyeball by adding a little bit of volume here. And I'm making sure that it's an even volume all across, all around, so it's not like, let me exaggerate this, it's not like this. I said I'm gonna exaggerate it. It's not, I'm trying to keep an even volume to it, and an even width to it if I can, or as much as I can. Because if you look at your own eyelids, they have the same width, the same volume to them. And that applies to most, if not all, animals. Alright, now I'm just moving this shape around a little bit, and let's look at it from a few angles. I'm gonna move it inwards a little bit so that it's wrapped around the eye nicely. Alright, I'll use the crease brush to emphasize this part a little bit more, mostly on the top of it. And now I'm gonna build, kind of fade this part, add light strips all around this, and fade this transition out a little. See, by doing it lightly enough, I can fade this transition out, and this inner part is still pointing outwards more than the rest of it. Alright, so let's see, what else can we do here? Try to, if you can, make it a nice circular shape. There we go. And you know, we could be doing some creative decisions here. You see that this has kind of those folds here, like almost like eyelids. I'm not really sure what kind of eyelids or whatever, membranes, or I'm not sure what kind of structure this dinosaur would have around its eyes, but we can make some creative decisions, and I'm gonna make it a little bit, just a little bit like human shaped, just a tiny bit, which isn't accurate at all, but you know, it's kind of nicer to look at, it's a bit cuter. So I'm using the draw sharp, and I'm going in the corners of it and drawing out, cutting this geometry a little bit and making it nice and a little bit sharper. Okay, I don't want to make it look too human. I think this is a nice look for it for now. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna make it a bit tighter, and you can play with this shape and this silhouette to your heart's content. I, however, have to move along here and do some more stuff. Right, well, you know what, I can't leave it like this. I'll just quickly lightly go over it with the clay strips, and by going very lightly I fade those transitions. I'm creating this kind of skin layer on top of it and fading that stuff out, while still keeping quite a bit of definition to it. See the effect we're getting here? There we go. Alright, I said I'm gonna work on those details here, so it's gonna be very simple here. We're not gonna do much with this. The first thing we're gonna do is remesh it to give us a bit more detail. And let's take a sample. Okay, we're gonna go down to 0.001 and see what happens. Hit remesh, and we'll start by smoothing this out a little to get rid of those geometry lines there. Let's use a bit more strength to our brush. Be careful not to destroy your outline whenever you're smoothing something, and always be mindful of the smooth brush because it takes away a lot of detail really fast, and you have to be mindful of that. Alright, so I'll dig this part. Let's see, maybe, yeah, I'm gonna dig it, but not too hard, and I'm gonna dig the sides of it. I'm gonna dig the sides, and I'm gonna stop before I reach the middle, and in that way the middle part is gonna be the most narrow part. And I'm not doing it very strong here, I'm quite lightly digging this part out. Alright, And in fact I'm gonna add those X strokes down the middle like this. And I'm gonna play with the shape of it for the corner of it, the tip of it. Let's hide this body. I'm gonna make this quite narrow, because as we can see from our reference, it's a lot like a bird's beak. Yeah, okay, so it's not that narrow here. Alright, let's... You know what, though, I kind of like the narrow. Yeah, but actually it wouldn't make sense for it to be so narrow, because it would be quite used up, you know. I'm gonna remess it, because as you can see I can't sculpt this part out, it creates some kind of weird glitch, so I'll remess this. And now I can sculpt this part out. And I'm gonna smooth it all the way out. I'm gonna get rid of this part here. Yeah, I'm gonna make it a bit of a worn kind of beak, because they would be using that mouth, that beak, to dig up roots, or probably not dig up roots. I don't even know what I'm talking about here, you know, but probably to eat vegetation, or perhaps roots as well, I'm not sure, or some kind of, you know, underground plant. But even if you're just grabbing plants and sticks and stuff like that, this would get worn out quite a lot. Alright, adding a little bit here to smooth this transition out. And in fact I'm gonna smooth it out too, because I don't want those lines to be so visible. But I'm not gonna smooth it entirely, I'm gonna leave some noise to it. Always leave a little bit of a noise to your sculpts, because it's always easier to get rid of noise than to add noise, and you will often require the noise. So I'm hiding everything, and the reason why is because I'm gonna dig the inside part of this. Leave a little bit of an area here untouched, but I'm gonna dig the rest out, and you know, that's gonna help create a little bit more of a realistic shape. And I'm gonna go ahead and dig quite a bit here. Yeah, just create this nice cavity here. Alright, and let's remess it. Alright, smooth it out. And because as you can see, I have kind of messed up this place here, I'm gonna add back to it. Oops. Alright, so there is a little bit of a problem here, and what's happening is that my brush was affecting both sides of the sculpt. See that almost half the brush is affecting this side, and this creates a bit of an issue. So whenever that happens, zoom in closer and make sure that you are only affecting the area that you want to be affecting, which sometimes can be a bit trickier than it sounds. But you know, I can just smooth this part out if it's not too broken up. There we go. Okay, something like this, just to create some interesting shapes here. Again, you can take a lot of time here and dedicate as much time as you want to this kind of detail work. And we're gonna repeat the same process for the lower beak here. Alright, let's remesh it, take a sample and remesh it down to 0.0. Actually, let's go 0.05 first, because it's gonna be a bit easier to smooth this part out. There we go. And once we've done this, now this lower part seems to be quite pointy, so let's play with the shape of it a little and make it a bit pointy, like this. Alright, and I'm gonna make it a little bit shorter. There we go. And now I'm gonna bring it down to 0.001, hit remesh, and do the exact same thing that I did for the upper one. Whenever you are doing stuff like that, always be mindful of how much pressure you're putting into your strokes. Don't put too much pressure, when a little pressure will do the trick. Alright, add a bit of volume down the middle, just a tiny amount. Alright, smooth it out a little bit. And let's dig in the inner part as well. And you know what, we could also use the mask brush to mask this area off and make sure that we don't damage it. Alright, and now we can freely do this. And smooth it out. You know, the higher your resolution, the stronger your smooth brush has to be. It becomes quite hard to smooth stuff out if you have a lot of resolution. So keep that in mind. Alright, and also keep in mind that whatever your smooth brush strength is, that's gonna carry over if you're using another brush and press shift to smooth. Alright, let's unhide all that stuff and get rid of the mask here, unhide the body, and I think we have a pretty nice head shape here. And again, remember, this is just the early stages of it. These are just the big landmarks, the big basic shapes, and this is what you should be aiming for whenever you're making a sculpt. Just get those big features down, those big landmarks, brows, skull shapes, you know, bony landmarks, the jaw lines, the shape of the body, all that stuff, some indications about the different muscle shapes, because later we can go into all that stuff, and that's what we're gonna do in future episodes. We're gonna go down into this and start defining those parts a bit more, or, you know, going higher in our resolution. For example, just a quick example here, if it doesn't crash. Okay, thank God it didn't. Yeah, just go down and start doing more detailed work, working closer with more definition, and, you know, start doing some actual interesting sculpting. But that's gonna be in the future. For now, I want you to really get used to building shapes like this. Start with the big defining features of your creatures, get the big definitions down, get the bony landmarks and stuff like that. Play around with the proportions, try to get them as close to whatever you're making or your references. It doesn't matter if you're making something that is based on a real thing, based on an artwork, or of your own imagination. Just try to get those shapes down. this is your main goal for this. Because see, while this is nowhere near completed, we already have a lot of information placed in. We have this, say for example, we have a definition for where the neck is, where the chest area is, the shoulder blade, the muscles of the lower limb, the big muscle or muscles of the back limb, you know, the tail, the spine. We have all that stuff already, and this is just our base. We haven't even gone near to details yet. None of what we've done here is considered a detail. They are all base, the base foundation, right? So it's very important that you take a lot of time here and you get your base foundation as tight as you can and as close to the end result as you can before start doing the details, before you start defining the muscles and going with a lot of resolution and doing all the finer details on it. It's very important to do that. Alright, so thank you so much for being here with me. This is a bit of a long one. For the next episode I think we're gonna do the toes, and after that we'll start moving it into the secondary details and start refining and sculpting out those shapes and cleaning it up, because this is, as you can see, quite rough. So we're gonna clean it up, which is gonna take a few episodes to do, but it's worth doing. And after we've done all that, then we can move on to the finer details and all the high frequency, high resolution details. Alright, that's it for this episode. I wanna thank you all so much for being here with me. Thank you for watching, my friends. I'll see you tomorrow on the next one. Have fun with sculpting, enjoy your time with Blender and with the 3D world in general, and I hope you make some really creative works and you have a lot of fun doing it. Thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye, take care.